The hospital waiting room smelled of antiseptic and despair. Raina Williams sat with her head in her hands, her dark curls falling forward like a curtain between her and the harsh fluorescent world. 22 years old, and she felt ancient. The weight of the world had settled on her shoulders the moment the doctor had pulled her aside 3 hours ago. Your father needs the surgery within the week, Ms. Williams. Without it. The doctor hadn't needed to finish that sentence. The sympathetic look in his eyes had said everything. $250,000. That's what her father's life cost. $250,000 she didn't have, couldn't borrow, couldn't earn in time even if she worked 3 jobs for the next 5 years. The number haunted her, echoing in her mind like a death knell. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her best friend Keisha. Girl, where are you? You were supposed to be at work an hour ago. Raina's fingers trembled as she typed back. At the hospital. Can you cover my shift? I'll explain later. She couldn't go to work. Not now. Not when her father was lying in that bed, tubes running in and out of him, his breathing labored and painful. Marcus Williams had been her rock, her hero, the man who'd raised her alone after her mother died when she was 8. He'd worked 2 jobs to put her through college, never complained, never made her feel like a burden. And now he was dying. Raina looked up as a nurse approached. Ms. Williams, your father is asking for you. She stood on shaky legs and followed the nurse down the sterile corridor. Her father looked so small in the hospital bed, so fragile. This man who had seemed invincible her entire childhood now looked like he might break at any moment. Baby girl, he rasped, his voice weak. You shouldn't be here. You should be at work. Dad, don't. Raina pulled a chair close to his bed and took his hand. His skin felt paper-thin. The doctor told me. About the surgery. You need that heart bypass this week, or you won't make it. Marcus closed his eyes. I'm so sorry, Raina. It's not your fault. Raina said firmly as she held his hand. We'll figure this out. I'll ask my boss for help, I'll take a loan, anything. There's nothing to figure out. Her father's grip on her hand tightened with surprising strength. I need you to promise me something. Don't even think of taking a loan, especially from Min Jun. Stay away from his people. Whatever happens to me, nothing is going to happen to you. Raina felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. I won't let it. Raina, listen to me. Her father's dark eyes, so like her own, fixed on her with desperate intensity. Min Jun isn't a man you negotiate with. He's not a man you make deals with. He's dangerous, baby girl. Taking a loan from him to start my business was the one decision I've regretted the most in my entire life. He shook his head weakly. Promise me you'll stay away from him. Raina wanted to ask what he meant. All she knew was that he took out a loan for his business 6 months ago, and when he lost his store in a fire 3 months ago, he was left with a $250,000 debt he couldn't pay. But she didn't ask. She promised because her father needed to hear it. Even as the words left her lips, a plan was already forming in her mind. A desperate, probably foolish plan. But when you were drowning, you didn't question the rope thrown to you. You grabbed it, even if you knew it might be a noose. That night, Raina stood outside Club Exodus, the most exclusive nightclub in the city. It was housed in a renovated warehouse in the district where legitimate business blurred into something darker. Everyone knew who really owned it. Everyone knew what went on in the private rooms upstairs. And everyone knew that if you wanted to find Min Jun Park, this was where you started. The line to get in stretched around the block, but Raina didn't join it. Instead, she approached the mountain of a man guarding the VIP entrance. He looked her up and down, his expression impassive. I need to see Min Jun Park, she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. The guard's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. Mr. Park doesn't take walk-ins, sweetheart. Back of the line. Tell him Marcus Williams's daughter is here. Tell him I'm here to discuss his debt. Something shifted in the guard's expression. He spoke into a radio in Korean, too quick for Raina to catch more than a few words. After a moment, he nodded and stepped aside. 3rd floor. Take the private elevator. Someone will meet you. The club's interior was all dark velvet and chrome, pulsing with music that thrummed in Raina's chest. Beautiful people danced and laughed, oblivious to the girl walking toward the private elevator with her heart hammering against her ribs. The elevator doors closed, sealing her in with her reflection. She barely recognized herself. She'd worn her nicest dress, black and simple, and pulled her hair back. She looked older than 22. She looked scared. The elevator opened onto a different world. Gone was the pulsing chaos of the club below. Up here, everything was quiet, elegant, dangerous. A man in an expensive suit waited for her. He didn't smile. "Follow me." He led her down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than her father's medical bills. At the end of the hall, he opened a door and gestured for her to enter. The office was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city lights. Dark wood and leather furniture spoke of wealth and power. And behind a massive desk sat the man she'd come to see. Min-Jun Park was younger than she'd expected. 26, she'd heard, though he carried himself with the confidence of someone much older. He was beautiful in a way that seemed almost unfair, with sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that missed nothing, and black hair styled with careless precision. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car, and he looked at her the way a scientist might examine an interesting specimen. "Marcus Williams's daughter," he said, his accent barely noticeable. "I've been expecting you, though I thought you'd wait until after your father died." The casual cruelty of the words hit Raina like a slap. She forced herself to stand straighter, to meet those cold eyes. "My father needs surgery. $250,000. The money he owes you, plus his medical bills, comes to $500,000. Min-Jun leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Your father borrowed $200,000 6 months ago. With interest, his debt to me is now closer to $300,000. Speaking of his surgery, I fail to see how that is my problem. I want to make a deal with you." One elegant eyebrow arched. "A deal? How fascinating. And what exactly do you have that I might want?" This was it. The moment where she either saved her father or destroyed herself. Raina took a breath and said the words that would change everything. "Me. I'll give you me. Whatever you want, however you want it. I'll work for you, I'll belong to you, I'll do whatever you ask. In exchange, you pay my father's medical bills and forgive his debt." Silence stretched between them. Min-Jun's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. He stood and moved around the desk with the fluid grace of a predator. He was taller than she'd realized, and he moved into her space with deliberate intent. "Tell me," he said softly, "why I shouldn't just make you my slave regardless? Your father already owes me money he can't repay. I could take you, use you however I please, till I decide that his debt is cleared." Raina's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Fear threatened to choke her, but she forced the words out. "Because I'll do it willingly. Because I'll give you what you want without you having to break me first. Isn't that worth something?" For a long moment, Min-Jun said nothing. He circled her slowly, like a shark. When he spoke again, his voice was contemplative. "Do you know what I do, Raina Williams? Do you understand who I am? You're a criminal. You hurt people. You've probably killed people." She forced herself to turn and face him. "But you're also the only person with the money to save my father's life. So yes, I know who you are. And I'm here anyway." Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. "Brave. Or foolish. I haven't decided which." He returned to his desk and opened a drawer, withdrawing a thick sheaf of papers. "A contract. I had it drawn up when I heard you'd made it past my guards. I thought you might do something dramatic. You knew I'd come? Your father is dying. You love him." "Yes, I knew." He held out the papers. "Read it carefully. Once you sign, you belong to me for 1 year. You'll live where I tell you to live, go where I tell you to go, do what I tell you to do. In exchange, I'll pay all of your father's medical bills and forgive his debt. After 1 year, if you've fulfilled your obligations, you'll be free to go." Raina took the contract with trembling hands. The legal language was dense, but the terms were clear. 1 year of her life for her father's survival. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages. "You have 24 hours to decide," Min-Jun said. "After that, the offer expires." "I don't need 24 hours. Raina found a pen on his desk. "Where do I sign?" "Your father won't approve. My father doesn't have a choice." She signed her name with a flourish that belied the terror singing through her veins. "Neither do I." Min-Jun took the contract, reviewed it, then added his own signature. When he looked at her again, there was something new in his expression. Not warmth, exactly, but interest. "Your father's surgery will be scheduled for tomorrow morning. The bills will be paid before he goes under. I'll have someone collect you tomorrow evening at 7. Bring whatever you can't live without, but travel light. I don't tolerate clutter.
Where will I be living?
With me. He said it like it was obvious. How else can I ensure you fulfill your end of our bargain? The reality of what she'd done crashed over Reina like a wave. She'd just sold herself to a criminal. She'd agreed to live with him, to belong to him, for a year. And she didn't even know what he'd want from her. What will you want me to do? Minjun smiled then, and it was not a kind expression. Whatever I want, Reina. That was the agreement. Now go. Say goodbye to your father. Enjoy your last night of freedom. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. We post new stories every week, so don't miss out on new updates. The next day passed in a blur of tears and lies. Reina sat with her father before his surgery, holding his hand and assuring him that she'd worked out a payment plan with the hospital. She told him she'd gotten a loan from her boss, that everything would be fine.
She watched the relief wash over his face and hated herself for lying.
But what choice did she have? The truth would kill him faster than his failing heart. The surgery went well. 6 hours that felt like 6 years, and then the doctor was smiling, telling her that her father would make a full recovery. Reina cried then, great heaving sobs of relief and grief and terror all mixed together. She went home to her tiny apartment and packed a bag. Clothes, toiletries, photos of her parents, the necklace her mother had worn. Everything else she left behind. At exactly 7 o'clock, there was a knock on her door. The man who came to collect her was the same one who'd met her at the elevator. He introduced himself as Yoon SEO, Minjun's head of security. He was polite but distant as he carried her bag to the black SUV waiting on the street. The drive took them to the other side of the city, to a high-rise that screamed wealth and privilege. The penthouse took up the entire top floor. Yoon Seo used a key card to access the private elevator, and then they were rising until Reina's ears popped. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Reina stepped out and forgot to breathe. The space was enormous, all clean lines and modern furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided a panoramic view of the city. Everything was pristine, expensive, and utterly impersonal. It looked like a hotel, not a home. Your room is down that hall, last door on the left, Yoon Seo said, pointing. Mr. Park will be home around midnight.
He expects you to be awake.
Then he was gone, and Reina was alone in the penthouse that was now her prison. She found the room he'd indicated. It was larger than her entire apartment had been, with an ensuite bathroom that belonged in a luxury spa. Her bag looked pathetic sitting on the massive bed. She unpacked mechanically, then showered and changed into pajamas, feeling ridiculous in her worn cotton pants and t-shirt in this palace of glass and steel. She tried to wait up. She really did. But exhaustion from the emotional toll of the past 2 days caught up with her, and she fell asleep on the couch in the living room, wrapped in a throw blanket that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She woke to find Minjun standing over her. Reina jerked upright, disoriented and vulnerable. He changed from his suit into dark pants and a black t-shirt that showed off a physique that spoke of discipline and violence. In the dim light from the city below, he looked even more dangerous than he had in his office. I told Yoon Seo you should be awake when I got home, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to fall asleep.
I don't care about your intentions. I care about results. He moved to the bar and poured himself a drink. Rules. Pay attention, because I won't repeat myself. You'll be awake when I get home, no matter what time that is. You'll prepare meals when I'm here. You'll keep the penthouse clean. You'll accompany me when I tell you to accompany me. You'll dress appropriately for any occasion. You'll speak when spoken to in the presence of my associates. And you'll never ever ask questions about my business.
Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes, what?
Reina's jaw clenched.
Yes, sir.
Good.
You're not as stupid as I feared.
He downed his drink in one swallow. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, someone will bring you appropriate clothes and explain your other duties. I expect you to be a quick study.
He left her there on the couch and disappeared down the opposite hall.
Reina heard a door close and realized she'd been holding her breath. She let it out in a shaky exhale. This was her life now. For the next year, this cold, beautiful, terrifying man owned her. And she had no idea how she'd survive it. The first month was a special kind of hell. Reina learned quickly that Minjun's expectations were exacting and his patience was non-existent. She learned to cook the Korean dishes he preferred, though she burned more than she successfully made at first. She learned to move silently through the penthouse, invisible unless needed.
She learned to read his moods in the set of his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes.
She learned that he was rarely home, often gone for days at a time. And when he was home, he was distant, cold, treating her like a piece of furniture that happened to be useful. A woman named Min Seo came to teach her about Korean culture and etiquette. She was kind in her way, though she made it clear that Reina's position was one to be pitied. The clothes that arrived filled an entire walk-in closet, designer labels Reina had only ever seen in magazines. Dresses, suits, casual wear, formal wear, everything tailored to fit her perfectly. She felt like a doll being dressed up for someone else's amusement. Min Jun never touched her. Not once. He barely looked at her most days. She was simply there, a ghost haunting his pristine penthouse. At first, she was relieved. But as the weeks wore on, the isolation began to wear on her. She had no friends here, no one to talk to. Yoon Seo was professional but distant. Min Seo came twice a week for lessons and then left. The only other person she saw regularly was the housekeeper, an older Korean woman named Mrs. Kim who spoke very little English but had kind eyes. Reina visited her father twice a week, carefully orchestrating her visits for when Min Jun was definitely away. Her father was recovering well, getting stronger every day. She told him she'd taken a job as a private chef for a wealthy family, that she lived on site, that everything was fine. The lies came easier now. Or maybe she was just getting better at telling them. 2 months in, things changed. Reina was in the kitchen, preparing dinner even though she had no idea if Min Jun would be home to eat it. The door to the penthouse opened, and she heard voices. Multiple voices. She froze, uncertain. Min Jun had never brought anyone home before. She heard Min Jun's voice, sharp with anger, speaking rapid Korean. Then another voice, equally angry, responding. Footsteps approached the kitchen, and suddenly Min Jun was there, blood on his white shirt, fury in his eyes. Get the first aid kit, he ordered. Now. Reina didn't hesitate. Mrs. Kim had shown her where supplies were kept. She grabbed the extensive medical kit from the bathroom and returned to find Min Jun in the living room, peeling off his ruined shirt. The man with him, someone she'd never seen before, was also bleeding from a cut above his eye. What happened? The question was out before she could stop it. Min Jun's eyes flashed to her, warning clear. What did I tell you about questions? Right. Sorry. She opened the kit, hands steadier than she expected. What do you need me to do? You know first aid? My dad taught me. He was a paramedic before. She trailed off, focusing on the supplies. Min Jun studied her for a long moment. Then he gestured to the other man. Fix Taeyong first. He's more damaged. Reina approached Taeyong carefully. He looked at her with suspicion, but when Min Jun nodded, he sat down and let her examine the cut. It was deep but clean. She cleaned it with steady hands, applied butterfly bandages, and covered it with a proper dressing. The cut on your temple needs stitches, she told Min Jun when she'd finished with Taeyong. Or it's going to scar badly. I don't care about scars. Well, I do. I'm not going to do a bad job just because you're too stubborn to sit still. The words were out before she realized she'd just snapped at a Mafia king. In his own home. While he was already in a bad mood. Taeyong's eyes went wide. Min Jun's expression went carefully blank. For a heartbeat, Reina thought she'd just made a fatal mistake. Then Min Jun laughed. It was short, surprising, and completely unexpected. Fine. Do your worst. She cleaned the wound, her fingers gentle on his skin. He was so warm under her touch, so solid. He smelled like expensive cologne and copper. This was the closest she'd ever been to him, and she was hyper-aware of every breath he took, every slight movement. How did this happen? She asked quietly as she worked, figuring if he was going to kill her for asking questions, she might as well make it count. A disagreement with some Russians who think they own the docks. His voice was casual, like he was discussing the weather. They learned otherwise. Are they? She trailed off. Dead? He asked. Not yet. But the night is young. Reina finished the stitches and sat back. Done. Try not to pick at them. Min Jun touched the bandage, then looked at her with something that might have been respect. You're steady under pressure. That's unexpected. My dad was a paramedic. I've seen blood before. Clearly. He stood and addressed Taeyong in Korean. The other man nodded and left, leaving Reina alone with Min Jun. He moved to the windows, looking out over the city. Thank you, he said quietly. It was the first time he'd thanked her for anything. Reina didn't know what to do with that. You're welcome. The dinner you were making. Is it ready? Almost. Good. I'm hungry. They ate together for the first time that night. Minjun asked her about her father's recovery, about her training in first aid, about her life before their arrangement. The questions were casual, but Reina sensed he was cataloging every answer, filing away information about her. She answered honestly, because what else could she do? After that night, things shifted subtly. Minjun still maintained his distance, still treated her more like an employee than anything else. But sometimes he'd come home and they'd eat dinner together. Sometimes he'd ask her opinion on something inconsequential. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her with an expression she couldn't read. 4 months into her year of service, Minjun told her to dress formally. They were going out. Reina chose a deep green dress that hugged her curves and fell to her knees, paired with heels that made her legs look endless. She left her curls natural but pulled them back from her face, and kept her makeup simple but elegant. When she emerged from her room, she found Minjun waiting in the living room in a charcoal suit that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. His eyes traveled over her slowly, and for the first time, she saw something other than indifference in his gaze. You look beautiful. The compliment surprised her so much she almost forgot to respond. Thank you. Where are we going? For a moment, he didn't answer. But just when she was about to apologize for asking questions, he spoke. A fundraiser. I'm attempting to transition some of my assets into legitimate business ventures. That requires playing nice with the city's elite. He offered his arm, a surprisingly old-fashioned gesture. You're my date for the evening. Try not to embarrass me. The ball was held at the city's most prestigious hotel, in a ballroom that dripped with crystal and gold. Reina had never been anywhere so fancy. Women in designer gowns drifted past on the arms of men in expensive suits. Champagne flowed. Classical music played. It was another world, and she didn't belong in it. But Minjun's hand was warm and steady on her back, guiding her through the crowd. He introduced her to people whose names she immediately forgot, all of them eyeing her with curiosity or thinly veiled disdain. She could feel their judgment, could see it in the way they looked at her and then at Minjun, connecting dots and making assumptions. Ignore them, Minjun murmured in her ear as they moved toward the bar. They're all hypocrites who think their money makes them clean. And what are you? I'm a hypocrite who knows exactly how dirty his money is. He ordered them both drinks. At least I'm honest about it. They mingled. Minjun worked the room with practiced ease, all charm and calculated smiles. Reina stayed quiet, playing the role of the pretty accessory. She was good at being invisible now. Then the music changed, shifting to something slow and romantic. Couples drifted onto the dance floor. Minjun turned to her and extended his hand. Dance with me. It wasn't a request. Reina took his hand and let him lead her onto the floor. He pulled her close, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers. They moved together easily, surprisingly in sync. For the first time since this nightmare began, Reina felt something other than fear or resentment. She felt something that might have been connection. You're a good dancer, she said softly. My mother insisted I learn. She had ambitions of me becoming respectable. His smile was bitter. She died before she could see how spectacularly I failed at that. Is she why you're trying to go legitimate? Partially. And because I'm tired of waiting for a bullet or a prison cell. His dark eyes met hers. Contrary to what you might think, I don't enjoy violence. You're just good at it. Yes. They swayed in silence for a moment. Then Reina felt Minjun's hand tighten on her waist, tension suddenly thrumming through him. She followed his gaze and saw a man watching them from the edge of the dance floor. The man smiled, cold and calculating, and lifted his champagne glass in a mock toast. Who is that? Reina whispered. Sergei Volkov. The Russian I had a disagreement with 4 months ago. Minjun's voice was carefully neutral. He's here to remind me he's not done with that conversation. Should we leave? No. That's what he wants. We stay. His grip on her gentled, but he kept her close. Just keep dancing. Act like nothing's wrong. So she did. But the magic of the moment was broken, replaced by a different kind of awareness. She could feel danger crackling in the air around them, could see the predatory calculation in Sergei's eyes as he watched them. The song ended. Minjun escorted her off the dance floor, his hand never leaving her back. They were nearly to the exit when someone called her name. Reina? Reina Williams. She turned to find Brad Chambers, a regular from the bar where she used to work. He was dressed in an expensive suit, champagne in hand, and he was looking at her like he'd seen a ghost. Brad. Hi. Raina forced a smile.
I didn't expect to see you here.
I could say the same thing. Last I heard, you were slinging drinks at Murphy's. His eyes traveled over her designer dress, landed on Minjun, and narrowed with recognition. Oh, I see. You traded up, huh? Found yourself a sugar daddy. The words were loud enough to carry to the people around them. Raina felt heat flood her face, felt humiliation burn through her chest. She started to respond, but Minjun moved first. He stepped slightly in front of her, his body language shifting in a way that made Brad take an involuntary step back. When Minjun spoke, his voice was soft, polite, and absolutely terrifying. I'm sorry, I don't believe we've been introduced. I'm Minjun Park.
And you are Brad Chambers.
Brad's voice was less confident now. I used to know Raina when she worked at a bar.
Yes, I heard you.
Minjun's smile didn't reach his eyes. Let me make something very clear, Brad. Raina is here with me by choice. What she did before she met me is none of your concern. What she does now is none of your concern. And if I ever hear you speak to her or about her with such disrespect again, I will personally ensure you regret it.
Do we understand each other?
Brad had gone pale.
I didn't mean.
I think you did. But I'm willing to be generous tonight. Minjun's hand found Raina's, warm and solid and protective. Apologize to her. Now. I'm sorry, Raina. I was out of line. Yes, you were. Minjun's voice could have cut glass. Now get out of my sight before I change my mind about being generous. Brad couldn't leave fast enough. The people around them who'd been listening pretended they hadn't been.
Minjun turned to Raina, his expression softening slightly.
Are you all right? No one had ever defended her like that before. No one had ever made her feel protected, valued, important. She looked up at Minjun and felt something shift inside her chest, something dangerous and warm and utterly unwelcome. I'm fine. Thank you. Don't thank me. That asshole deserved worse. He glanced around at the watching crowd. I think we've made enough of an impression tonight. Let's go home. Home. He'd said home, not back to the penthouse. And for the first time, Raina realized that was starting to feel like the truth. The ride back was quiet. Raina stared out the window, trying to process what had happened. Minjun had defended her. He'd protected her from humiliation, from Brad's cruel words, without hesitation. The man who'd bought her like property had treated her with more dignity than people who'd never seen her as anything but a bartender. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. Why? Minjun was silent for a long moment. Because you're mine. For the next 8 months, you're under my protection. No one disrespects what's mine. It should have sounded possessive and arrogant. It probably was possessive and arrogant. But all Raina heard was that he'd called her his, and that he'd meant it as something more than ownership. When they got back to the penthouse, Minjun poured them both a drink. They stood by the windows, looking out over the city, the silence between them different than it used to be. More comfortable. More charged. Can I ask you something? Raina said. You can. Whether I choose to answer or not is up to me. Why did you agree to my offer? The night I came to you, you could have done exactly what you said. Made me your slave to pay off what my father already owed. Why didn't you? Minjun took a sip of his whiskey, considering. Because you walked into my office ready to sell your soul for someone you loved. That takes a kind of courage I respect. And because... He paused, his jaw tightening. Because I know what it's like to be powerless. I swore I'd never make someone feel that way if I had a choice. But you do terrible things. For a living. Yes. I do terrible things to terrible people. I break the law. I hurt anyone who tries to hurt me or mine. I'm not a good man, Raina. I won't pretend to be. He turned to look at her. But I have rules. Lines I don't cross. And forcing someone who can't say no isn't something I do. You forced me, she pointed out softly. Did I? Or did you choose this? He moved closer. You could have walked away. You could have let your father take his chances. You chose to come to me. You chose to sign that contract. I didn't force you to do anything. I just gave you an option. A terrible option.
but an option nonetheless.
He was very close now, close enough that she could see the faint scar on his temple where she'd stitched him up. Has it been so terrible? Have I hurt you? Abused you?
Demanded anything you weren't willing to give. No, Reina admitted. You've been better than I expected. High praise indeed.
His smile was wry. You know, you're not what I expected either. What did you expect? Someone weak. Someone who'd break quickly, beg for mercy, try to manipulate me with tears or seduction. Someone like most people who end up owing me something. He reached out and tucked a curl behind her ear, the gesture surprisingly gentle. But you're strong. You're resilient. You don't complain or ask for special treatment. You do what I ask and you do it well. He seemed to search for the right word.
Interesting.
His hand lingered on her cheek. Reina's breath caught. She should step back. Should maintain the distance between them. But she didn't want to. She wanted him to keep looking at her like that, like she was more than a transaction, more than an obligation. Min-jun, she breathed. He dropped his hand and stepped back. It's late. You should get some sleep. The moment was broken. Reina nodded and fled to her room, her heart racing, her skin still tingling from his touch. She lay awake for hours, trying to understand what was happening to her. This was Stockholm Syndrome, wasn't it? She was confusing captivity for something else. She couldn't actually be developing feelings for the man who'd bought her. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, all she could think about was the way he defended her, the way he'd looked at her, the warmth of his hand on her cheek. And she knew she was in trouble. The kind of trouble that would only get worse as the months went on. What do you think about Min-jun stepping up to protect Reina? Is the ruthless Mafia king finally falling for his slave? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. After the ball, something fundamental changed between them. Min-jun started spending more time at the penthouse. He'd come home for dinner most nights now, and they'd eat together, talking about everything and nothing. He asked about her dreams, her plans for after the year was up. She asked about his business ventures, the legitimate ones he was building. He told her about his childhood in Seoul, about coming to America when he was 12, about how he'd fallen into this life almost by accident. My father worked for a loan shark, he explained one night over dinner. When I was 15, the loan shark was killed. His enemies came for everyone associated with him. They killed my father. Almost killed me. I survived by being more ruthless than they were. I'm sorry, Reina said softly. Don't be. It taught me an important lesson. In this world, you're either the predator or the prey.
I choose to be the predator. But you're trying to get out.
I'm trying to evolve.
There's a difference.
He poured more wine. I'll always be dangerous, Reina. That won't change. But I can channel that danger in directions that won't end with me in prison or dead in an alley. 6 months into her year of service, Reina found herself actually looking forward to Min-jun coming home. She'd catch herself checking the time, preparing his favorite dishes, styling her hair the way he seemed to like. She was in dangerous territory, and she knew it. But knowing didn't stop the fall. One night, Min-jun came home late, exhausted and frustrated. She could see the tension in every line of his body. Without thinking, she guided him to the couch and started massaging his shoulders. He stiffened at first, then slowly relaxed under her hands. They stayed like that for a long time, her hands working out the knots in his muscles, his breathing gradually evening out. When she finally stopped, he caught her hand and pulled her around to face him. Why are you being so kind to me? He asked, his dark eyes searching hers. Because you've been kind to me. In your way.
I bought you. You saved my father.
She sat down beside him. I'm not saying what you did was right. But you could have made this year a nightmare, and you didn't. You've treated me with respect. You've protected me. That means something. You're making excuses for me. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just seeing you more clearly. She didn't pull her hand away from his. You're not the monster I thought you were. I'm still a monster, Reina. Just a monster who happens to like you. The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. Min-jun stood abruptly, breaking the moment. I should sleep. Long day tomorrow. But Reina saw the way he looked back at her before he left the room. Saw the war happening behind his eyes. And she knew she wasn't alone in this confusion of feelings that shouldn't exist. The next morning, she woke to find a gift on her bed. A new phone, top of the line. A note in Min Jun's precise handwriting. Your old one was falling apart. Use this one. I've programmed my number in. Call me if you need anything. It was a small thing. A practical thing. But Reina held that phone like it was precious, because it meant he'd been thinking about her. Caring about her comfort. Wanting her to have a way to reach him. She was falling for him. There was no point denying it anymore. She was falling for the Mafia king who owned her, and there wasn't a damn thing she could do about it. The 7th month brought complications neither of them expected. Reina was at the market when she ran into Keisha. Her best friend's eyes went wide with shock and delight. Oh my God, Reina. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for months. I got a new job. I've been busy. Keisha's eyes traveled over her designer clothes, her expensive purse, her new phone. Busy. Right. Girl, what is going on? And don't say nothing, because you look like you've been living in a magazine. They went for coffee, and Reina found herself unable to maintain the lie. Keisha was her oldest friend, the one person who'd always been there. So she told her everything. The debt, the deal, Min Jun, all of it. By the end, Keisha looked horrified. Reina, you need to get out. This isn't healthy. You can't stay with someone who bought you. I have a contract. 5 more months. Fuck the contract. He's a criminal. What's he going to do, sue you? He could hurt my father. He could hurt me. Reina stirred her coffee, not meeting Keisha's eyes. And besides, I don't want to leave. What? I think I'm falling in love with him. Keisha's expression went from horror to pity. Oh, honey. No. That's not love. That's trauma bonding. He has all the power in this situation. Your feelings aren't real. How do you know? Reina met her friend's eyes. How do you know what I feel isn't real? Because he owns you. Because this whole situation is fucked up. Because you can't consent to a relationship when you're literally his property. The words hit like a slap. Because Keisha was right. Everything she was feeling, everything Min Jun might be feeling, it was all tainted by the circumstances of their arrangement. How could she know what was real and what was just survival instinct dressed up as emotion? That night, she was quiet during dinner. Min Jun noticed immediately. What's wrong? Nothing. Don't lie to me. You've been upset since you got back from the market. What happened? Reina put down her fork. I ran into my best friend. She reminded me what this really is. What we really are. And what are we? You're the man who bought me. I'm the woman who sold herself. That's all we can ever be. Min Jun's expression went carefully blank. If that's what you think, why do you look like it's breaking your heart? Because I'm an idiot who forgot the rules. Who started believing this was something other than a transaction. She stood up. I'm going to bed. She made it to her room before the tears came. Stupid. She'd been so stupid to let herself feel anything for him. In 5 months, she'd be free. She'd go back to her real life, and Min Jun would move on to whatever came next. Whatever was happening between them, it had an expiration date. There was a knock on her door. She knew who it was before she answered. Min Jun stood in the hallway, still in his dinner clothes, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. You're not an idiot, he said quietly. Yes, I am. Then we both are. He stepped into her room, closing the door behind him. Because I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop wanting you. And I know that makes me a monster, because you're right. You're here because I bought you. Everything you do, everything you feel, it's all colored by that. So what do we do? I don't know. He moved closer. All I know is that in 5 months, you're free to go. No strings, no threats, no consequences. That's not negotiable. But until then. He reached out and cupped her face in his hands. Until then, I want you to know that this isn't just a transaction for me anymore. I don't know when it changed. Maybe the night you fixed my stitches. Maybe the night I defended you at the ball. But it changed. Min Jun. You don't have to say anything. You don't owe me anything. But I needed you to know. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. I'm falling for you, Reina. And I know I don't deserve to feel this way. I know the circumstances are all wrong. But I can't help it. Reina's hands came up to grip his wrists, holding him close. I'm falling for you too.
I've been fighting it, but I can't anymore.
Then stop fighting. He kissed her. Soft at first, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Reina didn't pull away. She kissed him back, pouring months of confusion and denial and longing into it. His arms came around her, holding her close, and for the first time in 7 months, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-jun rested his forehead against hers again. I want this to be real, he whispered. Not something built on contracts and obligations. Real. How do we make it real when we started the way we did? I don't know. But we have 5 months to figure it out. He kissed her again, gentler this time. And after that, you're free. If you choose to stay, it'll be because you want to. Not because you have to. What if I can't stay? What if I need to leave, to know if what I feel is real? Then you leave.
And I let you go.
His voice was rough with emotion. Because I want you to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include me. They stood there in her room, holding each other, both understanding that the next 5 months would determine everything. Could something real grow from a foundation built on desperation and power imbalance? Or would they just be fooling themselves? Reina didn't have the answers. But for the first time in a long time, she had hope. The 8th month was a dance of tentative affection and careful boundaries. Min-jun courted her, in his way. He brought her flowers. Took her to dinner at restaurants where no one knew him as a criminal. They talked for hours, learning each other beyond the roles they'd been forced into. He told her about his mother, how she'd loved music and art, how she tried to shield him from his father's world. Reina told him about her mother, about the hole her death had left, about how her father had filled it with love and determination. They went to visit her father together. Min-jun stayed in the car, but Reina could see him watching from the street, keeping her safe, even from a distance. Her father was doing well, healthy and happy and planning to return to work soon. He still had no idea where the money for his surgery had come from, and Reina intended to keep it that way. Thank you for making it this far. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. Tell us what you think about the story in the comments below. The 9th month brought danger back into their lives. Sergei Volkov hadn't forgotten his grudge. He made that clear when his men ambushed Min-jun's convoy on the way back from a business meeting. Yuncio called Reina from the hospital, his voice tight with urgency. Mr. Park is asking for you. Reina got to the hospital to find Min-jun in a private room, his shoulder bandaged, his face pale with pain and rage. When he saw her, something in his expression softened. You shouldn't be here. It's not safe. I don't care. She went to his bedside, taking his hand. What happened? Sergei sent a message. With bullets. Min-jun's grip on her hand tightened. 3 of my men are dead. Yuncio is in surgery. This is what my life is, Reina. This is why you should run while you still can.
No. No.
I'm not running.
Not from you, not from this.
She leaned down and kissed his forehead. You're stuck with me. For 3 more months.
And then we'll see.
Over the following weeks, Reina watched Min-jun wage a calculated war against Sergei. It was brutal, efficient, and terrifying. She saw the side of him she'd been sheltered from, the ruthless Mafia king who'd built an empire on fear and violence. And she loved him anyway, because she also saw the man who made sure Yunicio's family was taken care of while he recovered, who set up funds for the families of the men who died, who held her at night when nightmares woke her, murmuring reassurances in Korean until she fell back asleep. The 10th month brought resolution. Sergei made a mistake, overextended himself, and Min-jun struck with precision that was almost surgical. When it was over, the Russian was in prison facing a lifetime of charges, his organization dismantled. Min-jun's position was stronger than ever. But the victory felt hollow. Reina saw the toll it took on him, saw the darkness that crept into his eyes. The night it was all finished, he came home covered in blood that wasn't his and told her everything. Every ugly detail, every brutal choice. He gave her a chance to see him clearly, to understand exactly who and what he was. I understand if you want to leave, he said quietly.
I wouldn't blame you.
Reina looked at this man she'd grown to love. This complicated, dangerous, damaged man who'd shown her more care than almost anyone in her life. And she made her choice. I'm not leaving. Not now, not in 2 months, not ever. She took his hand. I see you, Min-jun. All of you.
And I'm choosing you anyway.
He pulled her into his arms and held her like she was the only solid thing in his world. And maybe she was. The 11th month was peaceful in a way Reina hadn't expected. Min-jun's legitimate businesses were thriving. He was slowly extracting himself from the more violent aspects of his empire, delegating to trusted lieutenants. He talked about the future now, about possibilities that didn't include constantly looking over his shoulder. "Come with me," he said one night as they lay in bed together. They'd been sharing his room for months now, the pretense of separate spaces long abandoned. "I'm planning a trip to Seoul next month. I want you to meet my grandmother."
Your grandmother?
"The only family I have left. She's 93 and terrifying, and she'll either love you or eat you alive." He smiled. "I'm hoping for the former."
Why would you want me to meet her?
"Because she's important to me."
And so are you.
He rolled onto his side, looking at her seriously. "In 2 weeks, your year is up. Your contract ends. You'll be free to go." Reina's heart clenched. They'd been dancing around this conversation for weeks.
I know.
"I'm not going to ask you to stay. That's not fair. You need time to figure out who you are outside of this arrangement. What you want when you're not obligated to be here." Min-jun.
Let me finish.
He took her hand, threading their fingers together. "Take a month. Go back to your apartment. Spend time with your father, with your friends. Live your life without me in it. And then, if you want to come back, if you choose to be with me freely, with no contracts or obligations, I'll be here, waiting."
And if I don't come back?
Pain flashed across his face, but he hid it quickly. "Then I'll know I at least gave you the choice I never gave you before.
And I'll let you go. I don't want to leave."
"I know, but you need to. For you. So you can be sure." He kissed her softly. "I love you, Reina."
Enough to let you go if that's what you need.
The tears came then, hot and fast. Because she understood he was right. She needed to know if what she felt was real or just a product of circumstances. She needed space to breathe, to think, to be herself again. Even though the thought of leaving him hurt like a physical wound. "I love you too," she whispered against his chest. "That's why this is so hard." They spent the last 2 weeks together making memories. Min-jun took her to every place in the city she'd never been, showed her his world from 100 different angles. They danced in his living room at 3 in the morning. They made love like they were trying to memorize each other. They talked about everything and nothing, storing up words for the silence that was coming. On the last day of her contract, Min-jun handed her an envelope. It was a contract that showed that she was no longer in his debt. Reina looked at the envelope, then at the man she'd spent the last year learning to love. "Thank you. For everything. For saving my father. For showing me who you really are. Thank you for seeing me." He pulled her into one last kiss, long and sweet and tinged with goodbye. "I'll be here.
If you want me."
She walked out of the penthouse with her bag and the envelope, her heart breaking with every step. The city stretched out before her, full of possibility and freedom. She could go anywhere, do anything. She was free. But freedom felt like loss. The month that followed was strange. Reina moved back into her apartment. She reconnected with Keisha and her other friends. She spent time with her father, who was healthy and happy and had finally returned to work. She lived her life the way she used to, before Min-jun, before the contract, before everything changed. And she missed him every second of every day. She missed the way he'd bring her coffee in the morning. The way he'd absently touch her back when they passed each other. The way he'd listen to her stories about her day like they were the most important thing he'd ever heard. She missed his rare smiles, his dry humor, the way he'd look at her sometimes like she was a miracle he didn't deserve. "You're miserable," Keisha observed 2 weeks in. "I thought being free would make you happy."
I thought so too.
"So why don't you go back?" "Because I need to know if I love him or if I just got used to him. Because the circumstances of how we got together were all wrong. Because you're overthinking this." Keisha took her hand. "Look, I'm not saying what he did was right. Buying you was fucked up, and I will never think otherwise. But you're not that person anymore. You're not the desperate girl who walked into his office a year ago. You're someone who has choices now, who has power. And you're choosing to be miserable instead of choosing to be with someone who clearly makes you happy."
It can't be that simple. Why not?
You love him. He loves you. You're both adults who can make your own choices now. Stop punishing yourself for how it started and decide how you want it to end. Reina thought about Keisha's words for days. She thought about the life she'd been living for the past month, comfortable and familiar and hollow. She thought about the life she'd had with Minjun, complicated and dangerous and full of light. She thought about what it meant to choose freely, without fear or desperation driving her decisions. 3 weeks after leaving, she stood outside her father's house, gathering her courage. It was time to tell him the truth. All of it. Marcus Williams listened to his daughter's story with an expression that cycled through shock, horror, and finally, reluctant understanding. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "That man bought you," he finally said. "Yes. To save my life. Yes. And now you love him." "Yes." Her father sighed, looking older than his years. "Baby girl, I don't know if I can forgive him for what he did. For putting you in that position. But—" He took her hands. "But I see the way you light up when you talk about him. I see how much you've grown this past year. And I know my daughter. You wouldn't love someone who didn't deserve it. I'm going back to him, Dad. If he'll still have me." "I know. I can see it in your eyes." Marcus pulled her into a hug. "Just promise me you'll be careful. And if he ever hurts you, I'll find a way to hurt him back, Mafia King or not." Reina laughed through her tears. "I promise." That night, she stood outside Minjun's building, staring up at the lights of the penthouse. A month. She'd been gone a month. What if he'd moved on? What if he'd decided she wasn't worth waiting for? What if— Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I can see you on the security cameras. Are you coming up, or are you going to stand on the street all night?" She smiled and headed for the elevator. Minjun was waiting when the doors opened. He looked the same, devastatingly handsome in dark jeans and a black sweater, his hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. But there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before, a tension in his shoulders that spoke of sleepless nights. "You came back," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Did you think I wouldn't? I hoped. I didn't dare assume." He stayed where he was, giving her space. "Why did you come back?" Reina stepped out of the elevator, into the penthouse that had become her home. "Because I spent a month living my old life, and all I could think about was you. Because I miss the way you bring me coffee in the morning and the way you listen to my terrible jokes like they're the funniest things you've ever heard. Because I realized that love doesn't have to make sense or follow the rules or have a perfect beginning." She moved closer to him. "I came back because I choose you. Not because I have to. Not because I'm obligated. But because there's nowhere else I want to be." The careful control on Minjun's face cracked. He closed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. She felt him shaking, felt wetness on her neck, and realized he was crying. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered. "I thought you'd realize you were better off without me." "I'm not better off without you. I'm just off." She pulled back enough to see his face, to wipe away his tears with her thumbs. "I love you, Minjun Park. The real you. The complicated, dangerous, surprisingly soft you. All of it." He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of a month's worth of longing. When they finally broke apart, both were crying and laughing at the same time. "So what happens now?" Reina asked. "Now we do this right." Minjun took her hand and led her to the couch. "No contracts. No obligations. Just us figuring this out together. I'm still working on going legitimate. It'll take time, maybe another year or two. But I'm done with the violence, done with looking over my shoulder every day. I want a future, Reina. With you, if you'll have me." "What kind of future?" "The normal kind. Or as normal as we can manage." He smiled, and it was the freest, most open expression she'd ever seen on his face. "I want to take you to Seoul, introduce you to my grandmother. I want to take you on dates where we don't have to worry about rival gangs or business deals. I want to wake up next to you every morning and know you're there because you want to be, not because you're contractually obligated. I want that too. And eventually, when enough time has passed, when you're absolutely sure." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I want to ask you to marry me. Not now. Not for a while. But someday, when we've built something real on our own terms, I want you to be my wife." Reina looked at the box, then at him, tears streaming down her face. "You bought a ring. 3 weeks ago. Hope springs eternal." He set the box on the coffee table between them. "But I'm not asking now. I'm just showing you that I'm serious. That I'm in this for the long haul. Take all the time you need.
There's no rush. Minjun.
Yes.
Ask me now.
He froze.
What?
I said ask me now. I don't need more time. I don't need more proof. I spent a month away from you, figuring out what I wanted. And what I want is you. All of you.
For the rest of my life.
Reina, are you sure?
We don't have to rush. I'm sure.
She picked up the box and handed it to him. Ask me. Minjun's hands shook as he opened the box. The ring inside was beautiful, a deep emerald surrounded by diamonds. He slid off the couch and knelt in front of her, looking up with eyes full of love and wonder and disbelief. Reina Williams, you are the bravest, strongest, most incredible person I've ever met. You walked into my life when I least expected it and changed everything. You made me want to be better. You made me believe I could be better. I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anything. His voice broke. Will you marry me? Yes, Reina said through her tears. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he was pulling her down to the floor with him, kissing her like she was air and he'd been drowning. They stayed there on the floor of the penthouse, holding each other, crying and laughing and making promises for a future they'd build together. I have one condition, Reina said when they finally pulled apart.
Anything.
I want a long engagement. At least a year. I want us to date properly, to be a normal couple doing normal couple things. I want to earn this, to make sure we're building on solid ground.
That's fair.
Minjun kissed her forehead. I'd wait forever for you. And I want to go back to school. Finish my degree. I had to drop out to take care of my dad, but now.
She gestured with a hand wearing his ring.
Now I have options. Whatever you want. I'll support you in any way I can. And I want to tell my dad. Officially. No more secrets. Minjun paled slightly. Your father is going to kill me. Probably. But he'll get over it.
Eventually.
They spent the rest of the night talking, planning, dreaming. They talked about the wedding they'd have someday, about the trip to Seoul to meet his grandmother, about the legitimate business empire Minjun was building. They talked about everything except the way they'd started, because that chapter was closed now. They were writing a new story, one where they both had equal say, where both of them chose this freely. As the sun rose over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Reina and Minjun stood by the windows, wrapped in each other's arms. I never thanked you properly, Reina said softly.
For what?
For saving my father. For giving me the option when you didn't have to.
For being kinder than you had any reason to be.
I think we saved each other, Minjun replied. You showed me I could be more than what I was, that I deserved something good in my life.
That's worth more than any amount of money.
They stayed there, watching the city wake up, both of them thinking about the strange journey that had brought them here. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been right, not at the start. But somehow, against all odds, they'd found something real in the midst of all the wrong. Love didn't always follow the rules. Sometimes it grew in the darkest places, between the most unlikely people. Sometimes it took desperation and danger and difficult choices to find it. And sometimes, just sometimes, it was worth all the pain it took to get there. Reina looked down at the ring on her finger, at the symbol of a future she'd never dreamed she'd have. Then she looked up at Minjun, at the man who'd started as her captor and become her choice, and smiled.
So, she said, what do we do now?
Minjun smiled back, the expression transforming his face from beautiful to breathtaking. Now, we live. We build. We love. We do all the normal things normal people do. We're not normal people. No. But we can try. And so they did. They tried. They stumbled. They learned. They grew. Minjun kept his promise, slowly extracting himself from the criminal world. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks, but he was patient and methodical. He built a legitimate business empire, investing in real estate and technology and entertainment. The money was cleaner now, the future brighter. Reina went back to school, finishing her degree in business management. She joined Minjun's companies, bringing fresh ideas and a perspective he'd never had before. She was good at it, discovering a talent for strategy and negotiation she'd never known she possessed. They made a formidable team, in business and in life. They dated. Real dates, the kind normal couples went on. Movies and restaurants and walks in the park. They fought sometimes, because they were both stubborn and strong-willed. But they always worked through it, always came back to each other stronger than before. Marcus Williams eventually forgave Minjun, though it took time and many awkward dinners. But he saw how happy his daughter was, saw the way Minjun looked at her like she hung the moon, and he couldn't hate the man who made his baby girl smile like that. A year and a half after Reina came back, they went to Seoul. Minjun's grandmother was everything he'd promised, tiny, fierce, and absolutely terrifying. She looked Reina up and down with sharp eyes and said something in rapid Korean. Minjun laughed. She says you have fire in your eyes. She approves. Just like that. My grandmother has always been a good judge of character. She says you'll keep me honest. She's right about that. They were married 2 years after Reina's contract ended, in a small ceremony with only close friends and family. Reina wore a dress that made her look like a queen, and Minjun cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. Her father walked her down, and when he placed her hand in Minjun's, he whispered something that made the younger man nod seriously. Later, Reina asked what her father had said. He told me that I better spend the rest of my life making you happy, or he'd find a way to make me regret it, Mafia king or not. Sounds like Dad. I made him a promise. I intend to keep it. And he did. Every day, in 1,000 small ways, Minjun showed Reina that she'd made the right choice. He brought her coffee in the morning. He listened to her stories. He supported her dreams. He loved her with a fierce devotion that never wavered. 3 years after their wedding, they stood in the penthouse that had once been her prison and was now her home, looking out over the city. Reina's hand rested on her small but growing belly, and Minjun's hand covered hers. We're going to have a baby, she said, still marveling at the reality of it. We're going to have a family. Minjun's voice was full of wonder. A real family. Are you scared? Terrified. But also. He turned her to face him. Also more excited than I've ever been about anything. We're going to do this right. We're going to give our child everything we didn't have. Stability. Safety. Love. We're going to be good parents. The best. He kissed her softly. Because we know what it's like to fight for what matters. To make hard choices. To love fiercely. Reina leaned into him, feeling safe and loved and home. She thought about the terrified girl who'd walked into a Mafia king's office 5 years ago, desperate and alone. That girl had made a deal that had seemed like selling her soul. But in the end, she'd found something she never expected. She'd found herself. She'd found strength she didn't know she had. And she'd found a love that defied all logic and reason and expectation. The path hadn't been easy. The beginning had been all wrong. But the destination was worth every difficult step. I love you, she whispered against Minjun's chest. I love you too, he replied, his arms tightening around her. Thank you for taking a chance on a monster. You were never a monster. You were just lost. Like me. She smiled up at him. Good thing we found each other. The best thing. And it was. Against all odds, against all expectations, against every rule about how love was supposed to work, they'd found each other. They'd built something real from the most artificial of beginnings. They'd transformed a transaction into a love story. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated and sometimes painful. But it was real. And it was theirs. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, Reina and Minjun stood together, the future stretching out before them, full of possibility and promise. They'd survived the darkness together. Now they'd walk into the light, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next. Because that's what love was, in the end. Not perfection. Not following the rules. Not having a storybook beginning. Love was choosing someone every day, no matter how you started. Love was growing together, changing together, building something beautiful from whatever materials you had. Love was looking at someone who'd seen you at your worst and choosing to show them your best. Love was forgiving the past and embracing the future. And that's exactly what they did. Years later, when their daughter asked how they met, they'd tell her a simplified version. They'd say that sometimes people find each other in unexpected ways, that love doesn't always look like the stories say it should. They'd teach her that what matters isn't how you start, but how you grow together. But between themselves, in quiet moments when their daughter was asleep and they had only each other, they'd remember. They'd remember the desperate girl and the ruthless king. They'd remember the contract and the fear and the slowly growing affection that had transformed into something neither of them had expected. They'd remember, and they'd be grateful. Because sometimes the worst circumstances lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes you have to walk through the fire to find something worth keeping. Sometimes love is born from desperation and blossoms into something that saves you both. Their story wasn't traditional. It wasn't simple. It wasn't something they'd recommend to anyone else. But it was theirs. And in the end, that was all that mattered. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. We post new stories every week, so don't miss out on new updates. Thank you for watching.